This is the Balrog, a belt-driven 2-in-1 board from B1. I've owned this board for a while but haven't been able to use it until recently. With around 250 miles on it now, it brings us to this review. And yes, while this version of the Balrog is no longer available, I will talk about what has replaced it. After doing some research, I think B1 is an offshoot of Ownboard. What's important to know is that the board specs are almost identical to the Ownboard Bamboo AT Pro. Although now that is no longer the case, as the Balrog has had some upgrades to its components and a lot of new options to choose from. Balrog today now comes in 4 different variants. There's the Balrog-X, which is belt-driven, Balrog-Z being direct drive, the Balrog-S, which is a smaller battery belt drive, and Balrog-H, which is a hub motor with 2 battery types to choose from. The Balrog-X can be viewed as the direct upgrade to the original. Here is the specs of the original Balrog. Now here is the specs compared to the Balrog-X. Highlighted in yellow, you can see the changes they have made. The battery has gone from 2 battery options to just the LG M50 LT in a 12 series 3 parallel cell setup, which comes to 666 watt hours. I did some research on the new LG cell and it seems to be okay, although some might prefer the Molicell brand. They also included a 5 amp charger, which is great since the 3 amp charger can nearly take 8 hours to fully charge the board. The motors, ESC, remote, and trucks appear to be the same. As you can see, they dropped the red color scheme in favor of something less vibrant and more washed out. It kinda looks similar to an Onsera in my opinion. The first time I stepped on this board, it was extremely comfy. The deck has a good amount of flex and feels right for my weight at 174 pounds. There's minimal concave and the grip foam encompasses the entire deck, so foot fatigue is minimal with long rides. The torque feels adequate for the most part. Since this version is using a 10S battery, theoretically it should have less torque than those of 12S or higher setups. The newer 12S battery probably performs even better. I personally haven't had any complaints when it comes to taking off. Climbing hills it does okay, maybe struggles a little bit on the steeper inclines. At top speed, the board stays stable thanks to the traditional Kingpin style trucks, although I don't reach it often. I would not consider this a performance board though, especially with what else is out there. This board is more of a casual cruiser in my opinion. The carving experience feels very solid regardless of which wheel you use. Coming from my short board, I do have to get used to the poor turning radius, but it's not shocking given how long it is. The remote is a very simple design that gets the job done. 2 buttons, the roller, and a screen. I've noticed other brands are also using the same kind of remote. The screen shows you what you need. Speed, battery represented in bars, etc. Nothing very special here, but the remote works fine. Only issue I have is my remote seems to unpair after a couple of days of my board being turned off. One nice feature the Balrog has is the brake light, but that's not very uncommon these days. It's still somewhat noticeable if someone is behind you. The Balrog comes in at 24 pounds, so it can still be somewhat carried around. This is actually one of the more lighter 2-in-1 boards out there, as some get very heavy. You can't really pick it up from the front truck since the motor guards will drag. Picking it up from the rear works, but you will have a hard time finding a good grip, so it's best to get a handle. Mine didn't come with a handle, so I bought one from Meepo, which fit perfectly attached to the rear plate. Huge benefit from installing it. The all-terrain wheels are very comfy and satisfying. I keep the all-terrains at around 45 psi. The obvious downside to these pneumatics is, of course, the range loss. Also, I worry about getting a flat, but that still has not happened. I don't appear to be getting any speed wobble either. The 120mm cloud wheels are that in-between street wheels and all-terrain. I like them for the most part. You will feel gaps and bumps in the roads and paths with these equipped. Some of the rougher paths were too much for me using these wheels. I did, however, get that extra range boost, which I will talk about more in the range test. When using the all-terrain tires, you can go over grass and dirt, but I wouldn't consider it super off-road. In softer soil, I found myself just spinning tires, but that is because these are all-terrain tires and not off-roading tires. You can off-road with the cloud wheels as well, but I prefer to stay on pavement with them. I was, however, pleasantly surprised with how well this board performed off-roading, as this is not a mountain board. I did put on some 7-inch off-road tires, but I will go over these in a later video. Here is the results of my range tests I performed on both sets of wheels. The all-terrain got to around roughly 20 miles, while the cloud wheels made it all the way to 30 according to the remote. This is about what I expected for both. There's nothing too special about the tests. Definitely stops and goes, fairly level terrain, staying in speed mode 3. When the battery reaches 0 bars, it will feel like it's in some kind of limp mode, barely able to climb the smallest of inclines. Voltage sag probably starts around 15%. There are a few complications I've had in the 200 plus miles of riding. Both sets of wheels seem to be holding up. The motors have some scuff from debris getting into the guards, I think. I did have a piece of grip foam come off at one point, so I had to find some new foam to replace it. So perhaps the grip foam needs a better adhesive. The other problem I had was eventually I had all of the screws in the rear assembly around the motor guards come loose, including losing one entirely. I am lucky I found this early, as this could have been a disaster. I went through all the screws around the motors and re-screwed them in with blue Loctite. There was only a small amount on each one originally. I've been checking them periodically and all screws are staying tight now. I really hope this isn't an issue on their new variants. Overall, I would say the Balrog is a good board, perhaps just some issues with their assembly. There's definitely better boards with bigger batteries on the market, but it's a very good 2-in-1 option compared to what else is out there at a reasonable price. I also found from their website that you can customize the Balrog to have different types of wheels, or even use double kingpin trucks if you wanted it. I do think they should have kept the red accents in the new version, but I might be in the minority with that opinion. The worst thing about it is probably the charger, but thankfully the newer version offers a higher amperage. I'm going to try to get more videos on this channel as we move into the summer season. Thank you again for watching.